Here, I knitted to the end of the length of my cardigan. I ended up with a total of 70 centimeters and 3 color transitions. First, I have gray, then purple, this is the transition, and then we finish with pink. Now I will knit the sleeve. Let me show you how I will do it. Here on the cardigan, we made a special opening for the sleeve. And I will be knitting with turning rows. According to the pattern, this is the front row for me. Next, I will be knitting with a purl row. And I will be knitting not with circular rows, but with turning rows, to match the pattern we had. And to ensure that our last stitch doesn't slip, so that the seam remains even. And I start knitting on the purl side with stitches having 1 yarn over. Here, I joined the yarn, and now I start crocheting. I make 2 chain stitches to raise, yarn over, and while crocheting into the next stitch, I hide the yarn tail at the same time. I don't particularly like all the tails. I always try to hide them and do so immediately. The third column with 1 yarn over. And so I crochet until the end of the row. Here I have completed the row. I have 1 stitch left, 1 loop for a double crochet. This is the final stitch, and I am working it. And now I am joining the stitches. Here I have a double crochet stitch. Look, here is the last loop remaining, it was the connecting one. In principle, you can work it directly into the second chain stitch. And you will get a connection like this. But I don't really like it, it isn't very attractive. And there's a gap left here, which isn't very good. What am I doing? Here in the last column, I am making a slip stitch with 2 starts and 1 peak in the last 2 loops. That is, I am making 1 decrease stitch. I make a yarn over. Then, without working into the top stitch, I make a second yarn over on the hook and work into this stitch. I have 4 yarn overs on the hook. And in these first 2 yarn overs, these ones, I make the stitch. And I have 3 yarn overs left on the hook. And I knit all 3 together. Here is what I ended up with. A column with 2 bases and 1 top. Join column. Then I knit a connecting loop into this connecting column. Here's what I ended up with. Here is the completed row. And here, there are no little holes, nothing at all. And it has a very good connection. Basically, I will apply the same principle when reducing the sleeve. Our hands, both ours and the children's, do not have the same volume. And at the bottom, it tapers off. Accordingly, I will make these types of decreases a few more times. Take a look at how much you need. Sometimes I do it every 12 stitches, and sometimes fewer. It depends on the density of your knitting and the type of yarn you are using. Follow your hand. The desired width and thin structure I need to achieve should be 19 centimeters. This is what I will refer to ensure I end up with 19 centimeters. And then I will let you know about the sleeve's end once I've knitted it and see how much I've achieved. What am I doing now? As I mentioned, I will be knitting back and forth in rows. I make 2 chain stitches. I turn our knitting. Here. That means I should have gone this way, but I will go the opposite way. And then going back, I start to crochet single crochets the same way until the end of the row. Here I have knitted another row. Here I have made a connection. Do you see? Basically, everything here is solid. And then we continue to knit in rounds with turning rows, making stitches, as I showed, to reduce the bulk on the sleeve. If someone doesn't understand, just rewind the video and watch it again for more details. It's basically not difficult at all. You just make the first column with 1 yarn over, but don't finish it completely. Instead of finishing, you just make another column with 1 yarn over and finish the top with a common stitch. This is how we will knit until we finish the sleeve. I knitted the sleeve. Here it is. I ended up with a total of 27 rows. Out of these, I made 16 rows with decreases. So the total length of the sleeve is 39 centimeters. About 4 centimeters of it are going into the hem, so that it can last for several seasons. It lasted longer than expected. I finished the last row with simple double crochet stitches. I just needed to finish the sleeve neatly. I am starting to knit the hood. How do we knit the hood? We will knit the hood as a rectangle just like that with turning rows. That is, here is my front side. I started with the front. Accordingly, we start with the purl side to ensure our pattern is identical. Currently, I have 110 chain stitches. In other words, I join in the same way. And I begin to knit 110 chain stitches. 2 chain stitches. Don't forget to hide the yarn from the hood. And the previous one, if you didn't hide the yarn, we knitted at the beginning on the main knitting machine. And like this, we knit to the end of the row. We turn and finish with turning rows to our desired length. How do we determine the required length? We have the height from the neck to the head. But keep in mind that the hood will be sewn at the top later. And the length should be sufficient for the hood to be tall enough not to press down on the head. And it should be deep enough to ensure comfort if something is inside. Also, leave a couple of centimeters for the hem. In other words, our hood will primarily be folded. I will show you later how this is knitted. I've knitted the length of the hood that I need. For me, that's 26 centimeters. Now, let me explain how I will sew the hood. I will sew first on the front side, then on the back side. Why on the front side? Hoods are mainly made with a fold. And to ensure the seam isn't visible on the edge, I will first sew the front side. Well, about 10 centimeters, I think. And then I will switch to the purl side. How will I sew it? In the first stitch on one side of the hood, I attach the thread. I don't forget to hide the tail in the knitting right away. Here I attach it. Next, I take the second part of the hood and pull it through the first loop on the other side. And I pull it through the first loop. Here, I have connected my first loops on both sides of the hood. Next, just like this, I knit the next one into the second loop. And I knit into the second stitch on the other side. And I pull the thread through. And this is how I knit about 5 to 10 centimeters. I think I will continue knitting the thread. Remember to hide it in the hood. Let's pull it through. I have a thread hidden here as well. I will trim the excess ends later on. And this is how I do the stitching. Here I have made a little seam. Now, what am I doing? On the side, how does it appear? Now I need to flip my knitting, my leftover pink yarn. I'm twisting it all to the wrong side. Here is my wrong side. And now I will knit the rest of the seam on the wrong side. Just like that. Here I grab and find my loose strands of yarn. And here is my loop. We also move the stitch to the other side. We take the loop with us, pull it through, and start knitting on the purl side. Basically, you can start, for instance, not from the beginning, or you can also start from the corner. In that case, don't forget that we first knit on the purl side. And then at the end we switch to the knit side. And just like that, finish to the end of the row. What I wanted to show you is how to do the edging. In fact, it's very simple. We grab our thread. We tighten it. And then we continue. We simply pull through one stitch and make single crochet stitches. We immediately hide the ends, and this way, we create the edging of our entire product. We make the edging of our entire product, then pull through 2 stitches on the hook. We place it on and pull through. And thus throughout the entire product. We are threading. To be continued.